The bill is in response to the atmosphere of the 2022 election. Representative West said the bill, as introduced, does not address his concerns of the election process and candidate privacy, but would amend larger public official policy as it is currently written. I'm really curious, how did this kind of come about? Like, what's the background of proposing and presenting this bill?
So the background for me was in light of all that was going on with the 2022 election. Um, the premise for this piece of legislation was to um, focus on the election side of things when it comes to those who are the candidates deciding to run for office. And then when you file your report with the State Board of Elections, your home address is made public on that report. But with all that was going on with not just and beyond the misinformation, but the retaliation, that potential of retaliation or threats from the misinformation, I brought this piece of legislation forward for the safety of candidates. When it was drafted and then filed, I noticed that it amended the Public Official Privacy Act rather than focus on the election code. And so I put a brick on it just to make sure I was focusing on the right part of the statute. But that's why I didn't move forward.
Yeah, I was curious because I know like some states, like New Jersey, for example, um, have had like actual incidents happen. I think it was 2020, 2021, something like that, of a judge official's son and husband were attacked.
Yes,
So I
yes.
didn't know, is this in direct response to something going on?
It for me, it was more proactive, but you could also look at it as being reactive based on that story provided from New Jersey that I remember that. For the state of Illinois, I was simply being proactive. I didn't want it to come to a place where lives were threatened based on their address being on the election website or being made public because they decided to run for office, which could make individuals not, think twice before running for office, which hurts our democracy.
Cindy Black, the executive director of Fix Democracy First, said that there is rising political violence around elections.
We're seeing a lot more threats exposing personal information, threats against not just election officials, but their families, their children. So there's something has to be done. I know that in our state, here in Washington, there's concerns about creating new felonies, and there is, talk about that, about how should we deal with this issue, but there's also reluctance to create a bunch of new felonies.
Do you think that there needs to be a discussion of not only, um, people who are already elected to office or election officials, but extending that out to candidates who maybe are just thinking about starting to run?
I don't think anybody should be harassed for running for office, exposed to violence, threats of violence, if they're just running for office. I think we definitely need to address this. I think there's a small contingent. I don't think it's a huge amount of people, but it is a small, very loud contingent that is getting a lot of attention because they are resorting to things like violence because they know it creates fear and anxiety. And I think that's their strategy, is to rile people up and intimidate people to either not run for office, stay in office, things like that. We're seeing that.
I'm Cole Longcore.